At the end of the last video, I was kind of thinking out loud about whether it was actually a good idea or wise to report a theft that happens to you when you're overseas. And this idea connects with my next story, which is something that happened to me in Indonesia on the island of Sumatra. I already told the story of what happened in Sumatra in a previous video, but I'll go through the details, the main details quickly, just to bring you up to speed, or in case you hadn't heard it before. But before I went to Sumatra on that trip, I had just purchased my very first smartphone. And this was a pretty big deal to me. I'd never had one before. It was a Samsung Galaxy J Prime. I was very excited about it, and I was learning about all the new things it could do. And when I was in Sumatra, I had to go to immigration to apply for an extension for my visa, my tourist visa. So I left from immigration when all this was done, and I still had the phone in its case clipped to my belt on my right hip. And I was riding my bike at the time. So I'm riding my bicycle along the road, quite a busy road, and in my rearview mirror, I could see a man on a motorcycle come up behind me. And he was following quite close behind me and at my speed. So he was driving very slowly right behind me, and I could see him in my mirror. And I noticed him, and I had a little thought. It's like, hey, what's that guy doing? But I didn't think too much of it because, as I said in the last video, this happened all the time in Indonesia. People in cars, on bicycles, on motorcycles, they would ride up beside me or behind me and call out hello to me, and then we would often pull over to the side of the road. We would chat for a while in English. They want to practice their English. And we take a selfie together, and they get back on their motorcycle, and then they drive away. So I thought that's what this guy was doing. He was just getting up the nerve to pull up beside me and then talk to me in English, and maybe, you know, he can get a selfie with the foreigner. And sure enough, this guy eventually pulled out from behind me and came up right beside me. And I looked over at him, you know, kind of made eye contact. He was wearing a helmet, but I think I could see his eyes, if I remember right. He didn't have a face mask or anything. And I looked at him, he looked at me, and I kind of gave him a little wave and a little smile. But instead of saying hello and asking for a selfie, he suddenly lunged over with his left hand, grabbed the pouch containing my smartphone off my belt, plucked it free, hit the accelerator on his motorbike, and took off. And then I started pedaling. I thought maybe I could catch this guy. I'm on a bicycle. So I started riding after this guy. He's ahead of me on my side of the road. They drive on the left in Indonesia, just like here. So I'm chasing after this guy. He sees me chasing him. So what he does is he cuts across this busy road and now starts driving against traffic. It was really quite dangerous. He was heading right into traffic. There was cars and a bus and a truck, I think. And they all had to hit their brakes hard because he was coming right at them. He was kind of losing control. There were screeching tires. And then he zoomed around the cars and the bus and the truck. I did the same thing. I was following him. So now all the traffic had come to a stop. I cut across the road going against traffic myself, and I'm following him up the side here. And then ahead of me, I can see he got to an intersection. And when he got to the intersection, he stopped, and another guy on a motorbike came up right beside him. And the two of them were clearly friends, perhaps in cahoots as robbers, because they kind of, you know, exchanged information, and it looked like they exchanged things. They gave things back and forth with their hands. So I was wondering, oh, like this, it looked like this guy stole my phone, drove to the corner, met his partner, gave my phone to his partner, or pretended to, and then the two of them split up. And they went in two completely different directions. So I'm still chasing him on my bike, and now I have to decide which one to chase. I don't know which one has my phone. So I decided to chase the first guy, the guy who originally stole my phone. He turned right. And then by the time I got to the corner on my bike and turned right, he'd already disappeared. There was like a hill there. He'd gone over the hill, down the other side, and he was gone. I had absolutely no hope of catching this guy on my bicycle. And I guess, unless he crashed or something, I never had any hope of catching him. I didn't intend to go into all this detail with this story, but since I've started, I'll continue. Most of this detail is new, and I didn't tell it the previous time. But the details that occur to me now is that a real theft in real life is quite different from what you see in the movies. I noticed in the movies someone stealing something and then the good guy chasing the bad guy. It's a big part of a lot of movies, and you see that same scene over and over again. And a couple of things happen in those movies that just don't happen in real life. The first thing is that when the good guy is chasing the bad guy, they chase them for a long distance and they can always see him. They can see the thief going in and out of all these alleyways and over houses and down streets and in and out of shops. And they always keep that person in sight, and they know who they are. And they chase them for a long time. In real life, in my experience, and based on YouTube videos that I've watched of thefts, caught on CCTV camera, once a person grabs your laptop or your wallet or your phone and starts to run, they're gone. They disappear so fast, especially when you're in another country, because the streets can be very narrow, very crowded. They know this place very well. You don't know it at all. They go around the corner, duck down an alley, and they're gone. I mean, the second they're out of your sight around a corner, they can make another turn and you'll never find them. In Hollywood, the hero always knows where they went and somehow can still see them 100 meters ahead, and they keep chasing them and chasing them. In my case, I got to the corner where this guy turned on his motorbike. By the time I got to the corner, he was gone, totally out of sight. And if he was on foot, it would have been the same thing. I never would be able to catch one of these guys. And if they disappear into a crowd in a crowded market or something, how are you even going to recognize the guy? It's not like when I looked at him on his motorcycle, I made a mental note about the shoes he was wearing and the color of his shirt. Later on, when I went to the police, of course, they asked me to describe him. In the movies, they usually know something. I didn't know anything. I knew he was on a motorbike and he was a man. That's it. I couldn't remember the color of his helmet, the kind of motorcycle he was driving, the clothes he was wearing. I couldn't remember a single thing about this guy. And that's real life, contrasted against what you see in the movies. The other thing you see in movies is that when when the hero is robbed and they shout, "Stop thief," all the people around pay attention. They all turn and they see the thief running away, and they also might help in chasing them and running the thief down. Everybody takes off, running after this thief. But I'm here to tell you that in real life, that doesn't happen. If something happens to you, you are pretty much on your own. Not that people don't want to help. People do want to help, but people just don't notice. They don't know. They haven't seen what happened. You're standing there looking at your smartphone. Some guy runs behind you, snatches it, and runs away. You might think everybody, the 100 people standing around, would have seen what he did, but nobody saw it. Nobody saw it but you. So nobody is going to help you in these situations, which is kind of an interesting thing. I went around the corner on my bike chasing after this guy, and when I got around the corner, he was gone. I couldn't see him anymore. But this happened to be right beside a big shopping center, a big department store shopping complex. And there happened to be an armed security guard standing right there on the street, right where the thief would have driven past. So I'm thinking, as soon as I got around the corner, pedaling like an insane person, trying to catch the thief, stop thief, stop that man, he stole my smartphone. I'm shouting things in English. Nobody's paying any attention. And I thought, wow, the security guard, it's his job, that's his profession, right? He must have heard me scream, stop thief, and he must have seen the guy, and he must have seen me chasing him. So I went up to him to ask him, where did he go? Like, did you see a man on a motorcycle who just stole my phone? Did you see where he went? And of course, the security guard just kind of stared at me. It's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I mean, we had a language barrier, of course, to deal with, but even setting aside the language barrier, he didn't know I had been robbed. He had no idea what I was talking about. 100, 200, 1,000 motorcycles an hour drive past him. It's not like he was going to notice the one motorcycle that my thief was driving. So my instinct when I saw the security guard was relief. Oh, security, man with a gun. He's going to help me out. And even if he doesn't know where the thief went, he will call the police. He will get engaged and involved. And in the end, of course, he just stared at me until I went away. There was nothing he could do or was willing to do. And it went further than that, because right around the corner in this shopping complex, there was an English school. And previous day, I had visited this English school. So I had already been to this language school, and I had spent some time there chatting with the clerk at the front desk who spoke English, a very pleasant woman. And I'm standing there after trying to get the security guard to help me out, wondering, well, what do I do? What do I do? I'm kind of in panic mode. So I was picturing this thief being part of some international sophisticated cartel where within seconds he is going to be online sending emails to reset all my passwords and lock me out of my bank accounts and do all these crazy things because he has the power of my phone. That's what was going through my imagination. So I had this idea that the clock was ticking as my entire life was going to become crumbling down around me because this thief now has my smartphone. So without any clear idea of what to do next, I thought, oh, I can pop into this language school and they speak English, and I can communicate with them what happened, and they'll have a phone. They can call the police. The police will come and we can get the ball rolling on catching the thief, getting my phone back, and preventing this cartel, this international organization from taking over my life. So I go into this, I park and lock my bike outside. I'm kind of breathing heavy from all the chasing. And I go into the language school, go up to this woman at the counter that I'd met before and who spoke English. And I'm telling her the story about a man just stole my smartphone and I don't know what to do. And she basically just looked at me. It's like, okay, what do you want from me? She, like nothing. I just got nothing from her at all. Again, I thought maybe she could call the police or something. And I kind of suggested that. And she just said, why would I call the police? Well, it's got nothing to do with me. As I left from the language school, I was still in a little bit of a panic because I was so inexperienced when it came to smartphones and thieves in general and what could happen when your phone was stolen. I was still consumed with this idea that this thief was quite a sophisticated criminal and had instantly gone into a control center, and they were dissecting all the information on my phone and gaining access to my entire life and running all the scams on all my friends and relatives that you hear about all the time. So my initial thought was passwords. I have to change all my passwords for everything. And again, I'm here to tell you that in the modern age, changing the passwords for all of your online activities, that is a monumental task. It is not something that happens like that. And it is exceedingly difficult, more difficult when you're in a bit of a panic. This is something best done first thing in the morning when you're cool and refreshed, sitting at your desk in your comfortable home, drinking a cup of coffee, and then you casually change some passwords on your email accounts or whatever. Doing it in Sumatra in a panic when your phone's just been stolen is a whole different ball game. And I was staying in quite a low budget hotel that didn't have Wi-Fi. So even if I raced back to my hotel, which was, I don't know, about 11 kilometers away from where I was, where the theft took place. So I have to ride my bike 11 kilometers through temperatures like this, get back to my hotel. Even then, I have no Wi-Fi, so I still can't get online. I'm gonna have to find a place that has Wi-Fi and then log in and then finally get access to all my accounts. And I didn't know where to go because up until that point, I hadn't been anywhere with Wi-Fi. I don't generally hook up my laptop to Wi-Fi at all. Back in those days, I would go to internet cafes. So I just wasn't in the habit of seeking out cafes or restaurants or hotels that had Wi-Fi. I didn't care about Wi-Fi. So my hotel didn't have Wi-Fi, so I grabbed my laptop, and you have to grab all of your adapters and your cords and your plugs, and you have to grab all of your ID, all the information you need to log in to all of your various accounts. And you're doing all this in a panic, and you're breathing heavy because you just rode 11 kilometers to get back to the hotel. So I stuff all this stuff into my knapsack, and then I head out into the city. That is a strange place to me. I'm traveling, so I'm not that familiar with it. And now I have to find a place where I can sit down in some relative comfort and log into Wi-Fi and get busy changing all of my passwords. And man, like I said, that was not easy. These days, with all the layers of security that have been added to everything, including your online life, is your account and your password, but trying to change your Google account password and all your other passwords, it's not easy to do. It takes time, you have to be methodical, you have to be careful, you've got to take care of all the details. And it took me the whole day and then most of the next day to slowly work through this whole process and change all these passwords. That process seemed to go on forever, to be honest. That first day, I worked my way through all of the most important accounts and changed the passwords for those. And once that was done, I thought it was time to go to the police station. I still had it in my mind that I was going to report this theft. And I just wanted to take care of the passwords first before I went to the police station. That seemed more important. Things worked out very differently in Indonesia compared to the Philippines. In the Philippines, as I told in the last video, I just happened to walk into a giant party. The police station was celebrating a promotion when I got there. So everyone was singing and dancing and drinking, and that led to quite an unusual experience. But in Indonesia, in Sumatra, there was no party going on, no dancing or drinking. Everyone was very professional, very helpful, very friendly. I even have a photo of me posing with all of the officers in the front desk area. I'll stick that picture in right here. So that is me and all the people that were helping me out. So I started working through the process of reporting the theft. And interestingly enough, we ran into a problem right from the very beginning because they needed some kind of proof of ownership. And I hadn't even thought about that before. You can't just walk into a police station and say, someone just stole my $1 million necklace full of diamonds and made of gold. You have to have proof that you owned $1 million necklace. And you have to have ownership papers and receipts and maybe photographs of it. The police need these sorts of things. They just can't take your word for it that you had something valuable and it was stolen. And I hadn't really thought about that. So I went into the police station and said, I'm here to report that someone has stolen my smartphone. And they quite reasonably said, well, do you have a photograph of this smartphone? And do you have a receipt? Do you have the ownership papers? Do you have the serial number? These sorts of things. And I had none of those things. And in particular, What they wanted was something I'd never heard of before. They wanted an Mae number. Even if I had nothing else, if I had the Mae number, they could process a theft report. And I'd never heard of such a thing before. And Mae stands for, I think, International Mobile Electronic Identity. So it is a special number that identifies every smartphone, maybe other electronic devices. It's very specific to that device, and it's not just written on it, it is like baked into the electronics of that device. So no matter where it goes, no matter what happens to it, you can scrape off the serial number, you can do whatever you want to it, but it always has that Mae number baked right into it, and it can be identified through this International Mobile Electronic Identity number, your Mae number. And they said to me, well, if you can provide the Mae number, we can move forward. I can't remember all the details now, but I left the police station after that first visit. I went back to my hotel, got onto my laptop, and it turns out that I could go into my Google account because my phone was registered with my Google account in various ways. And I had tracking turned on. I had all these sorts of find my phone features turned on, all those different things. And I mean, when you go into your Google account, you can really go into this rabbit hole of information that you had no idea what was there. And I eventually tunneled in deep enough that I found records of my phone, of my Samsung Galaxy J Prime, that contained the Mae number. The Mae number was embedded in the information that Google recorded about my phone. So I was able to go back to the police station very proudly, I have to say, as I'm learning all this new stuff about technology, and then present them with the Mae number. Here it is. So that kick-started an official report, and a detective was assigned to my case. Oh, another friendly pooch. I have a photo of me standing with the detective in the lobby of the police station, and that's her right there. Very friendly woman. She ended up actually sponsoring me in the future for visa extensions. In order to get a tourist visa extension, you had to have a sponsor, like a local person, vouch for you and sign papers and things like that. And I got to know her well enough that she became my, even became my sponsor for visa extensions. Anyway, I spent quite a long time with her at the police station, and quite interesting as well, she had to get an interpreter to handle my report. And it wasn't because of her language ability. She spoke English well enough to do everything, but according to the official rules dealing with a foreigner, it had to be very precise. And she made a couple of phone calls, and within an hour or so, I sat there waiting, drinking tea and cold drinks. A man showed up who was the official interpreter for the police station. I think he was an English teacher from that area, and he freelanced as an interpreter, and his English was very good. He came in and sat down with us, and then we could get on with the details of the report. She asked me questions in Indonesian through him, and I replied in English, and he translated. And she filled out a very long and detailed report, which we all read together. No rum involved this time, no singing or dancing, and no Shakespearean orations, as happened in the Philippines. We just read it, and when everything was correct, printed it all out, and we signed it, and I got my copies of the police report, and that was pretty much it. As far as that is concerned, I was still kind of, sort of hoping that at some point when we're done, someone would blow a whistle and all these SWAT, cops in SWAT outfits and high-powered rifles with scopes would come pouring out of somewhere, and we would all pile into a truck and go off looking for the thief and get my phone. I knew that wasn't going to happen, but I was still kind of hoping that maybe something like that would happen and there'd be an actual search for the thief. But no, it did not go that far, even as professional as they were. I was particularly excited about one thing. when I did my deep dive into my Google account, I uncovered a complete map of all of the travels my phone had gone on because I had turned on the location tracking feature, or at least maybe it was on by default. I had just never turned it off because I don't think I had even been aware of it, to be honest. But as I was doing all this research, I found the area where it had day-by-day maps of everywhere my phone went based on GPS tracking. So I could see my phone, I could see my journey from my hotel by bicycle, the 11 kilometers or so to the immigration office. I could see it coming back from the immigration office, and I could see in this map on Google Maps the exact point where the theft occurred, where my phone suddenly took a different route, and instead of going with me back to my hotel, it went off in a new direction. So wherever the thief went on his motorcycle carrying my phone, I could see exactly where he went, and I could trace his path all the way through the city and then see where it finally ended up. And I assume he drove with my phone. It was the guy that I had been chasing, the original thief. He did keep my phone because I could see the corner where it turned. That was the corner where he turned. So his partner, where they did the fake out, he didn't actually give my phone to his partner. They tried to make me think they had, but he had kept it. And I assume the way this works, he was driving with my phone and it was still on and my SIM card was still in the phone. And then he eventually felt safe enough to stop the motorbike, open up my phone, remove the SIM card, and perhaps turn it off. I'm not sure if removing the SIM card is enough to turn off the tracking feature. I think maybe it is. So maybe he just removed the SIM card, and as soon as he did that, then my phone vanished off the face of the earth. There was no more tracking after that point. Or maybe the tracking ended because he went into the phone's menu settings and knew enough to turn off tracking. Whatever happened, my phone suddenly vanished, and I saw the exact point where that happened, and it happened to be right beside the bus station in that city. And I brought my laptop to the police station open to this map so I could show the police exactly where my phone went and where the thief took it. And I thought that was a pretty cool thing, and I thought the police would be quite excited about that, and they could use that map to actually go find where the thief went. They can go there and they can investigate and look for clues and interview people. But they were they were very blasé about my map. They looked at it and they says, oh yeah, he took it to the bus station, and they said that's where all stolen goods go. It's where sort of a central market for everything that's stolen in that city. It all goes to that bus station, and then they sell it to brokers there. And then within a day, within an hour maybe, it's on a bus heading to Medan, heading to a big city where it will disappear forever. So even though I was so proud and so excited to be able to tell them where my phone went, they said, yeah, we already knew that. That's where all the stolen phones go. And a couple of days later, or maybe even the very next day, I actually got on my bike just out of curiosity, and I rode my bike to that exact spot where the tracking on my phone disappeared, just so I could see the last remaining point on this earth where I knew my phone had been. And I just sort of stood there and looked around, and I thought, so this is where my phone went. This is where the thief ended up. So that was quite interesting. Well, we finally reached the point where I'm getting back to the theme of this video, and the theme being reporting a theft is not always the best thing to do. And that connects with this story from Sumatra because as I was leaving the police station, and even while I was at the police station, I was the center of attention for this group of men. My picture was being taken, talking with the detectives at the counter. And when I went outside the police station after everything was finished, some men stopped me and were just chatting with me, and I told them the story about my smartphone being stolen. And as far as I was concerned, these were just people at the police station, local people who spoke English, and I'm always eager for a chat if I come across someone who speaks English. But it turns out they were all journalists. They were working for local print media and internet media, and they were all on the police beat. And it's not every day that a foreigner on a bicycle shows up with a story of having his smartphone robbed. It's not like a earth-shattering headline, but it's a headline. So they all talked to me, and I didn't know about it, but they were actually interviewing me. And my story ended up in the local papers, and then it ended up on the internet in various spots. And I'm not aware of anything terrible happening because of that. I'm just heading out into a field here for a few minutes, get away from the pavement. So I'm not aware of anything bad happening because of this media attention, but I did know that it did have an effect, because from that day, as I was riding my bike around that city and around that region, people would often stop to talk to me, and they recognized me and said, "Oh, we read the story about you, you know, that someone stole your smartphone." And they were very apologetic. They sort of took it as an affront to Indonesia. They felt bad that a foreign tourist had been robbed in their country, and they wanted to tell me how sorry they were, and they said they felt embarrassed for their countrymen that someone here would do this to a foreigner visiting Indonesia, things like that. But perhaps a story getting into the media like that, as I said, can have an effect on local tourism, can have all kinds of ripple effects that you're not aware of. But the more direct and the more serious consequence, possible consequence, I came across much later. I learned through all this activity and talking to people, and I got very interested in looking for videos on YouTube of other people who had had their smartphones stolen, because this is probably one of the most common thefts today, and it's interesting to see how it happens. A lot of it gets caught on CCTV cameras, and you can see a lot of this footage on YouTube. And I learned the Indonesian words for thief, snatch thief, motorcycle thief, phrases like that. And I started entering them into Google, not English words, but Indonesian words. And this opened up a treasure trove of really, to be honest, horrifying videos. I don't know if they're still on YouTube to the same extent as they used to be. I did a search recently, and they seem to have disappeared to a large extent. But at that time, when I typed in the word, for example, jambret, which means thief in Indonesian, I found hundreds of amateur videos shot on smartphones of thieves being beaten. I mentioned a lot of people who knew about my story came up to talk to me. And in talking to me, every single one, it seemed, had a story to tell of their own experience being robbed coming out of a bank, being robbed at an ATM, having their smartphone stolen. Their sister had her knapsack stolen. Everyone had a story about being robbed in Indonesia. It was a very common experience. And the people there had learned to really hate thieves. They really hated them. And when they caught a thief, if some thief was inept enough to steal a smartphone or try to steal one and not get away, and a crowd catches him, it's bad news for him. They took their revenge on these thieves. And in these situations, the police usually had been called. The police were on their way, but before the police got there, the local people had their revenge first. And as I said, this revenge was quite dramatic. So when I saw all these videos, I started thinking, I'm very glad in a way that my thief, the guy who stole my smartphone, he wasn't caught. Sure, I wasn't happy with the guy, And sure, I wish he hadn't stolen my phone, and sure, I wish I still had my phone in my possession, but I didn't want the guy beaten to death. Sure, I'm not very fond of thieves, but I don't think anybody deserves to be beaten quite that badly. And setting aside any personal ideas of whether that is just or not, I didn't want to cause that to happen to anyone. So there I was in Indonesia shouting at this guy, "Thief, thief, stop him, he stole my phone." Not thinking about what the consequences could be. If people understood me and actually caught the guy, he could have been beaten quite badly and hurt quite badly because I pointed him out as a thief. And not to get too crazy with this idea, but in a crowded setting overseas, you're pointing at a guy and shouting thief. Are you really sure it's the guy? Someone stole your phone and ran, and you turned and pointed out the guy, but are you 100% sure you're pointing at the right guy? Because once a crowd grabs that guy and starts beating him, it's too late for you to step in and say, oh, I made a mistake. That's not the right guy. The thief ran away. I pointed to the wrong person. So there is that element of, you kind of have to be a little bit careful before you start shouting thief and pointing at people overseas, because the consequences for that person can be quite dire. Sure, try to catch the thief, I suppose, go to the police station, file a report, but beyond that, making a big stink out of it and making it into a huge drama, you might want to pull back a little bit or think about that before you do it. At least that was the lesson I learned from the Philippines and from Sumatra. going for a walk, you never quite know what you're going to run into. And I guess if you've ever recycled a plastic bag and you wonder what happens to them, well, maybe this is what happens to them. This looks to be a recycling center. And I've never seen anything like this in my life, but that drum filled with plastic bags spinning around. And I can only assume this is an attempt to clean them, right? What else could it be? They're inside a screen, and as they flop around, maybe dirt gets loosened or they get dried. Maybe it's a dryer. It's cleaning them and drying them at the same time, getting them ready to be recycled. Wow, isn't that crazy?